Hey, it's Dave and welcome to Classic Basslines. In this video, I'm going to break down the bass line on Buggin Out by A Tribe Called Quest. I'll talk a little bit about what makes this such a cool bass line, and then later on I'll play a slowed down version of it for you. Click the link in the description to get the tab on my website. And of course, if you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. So Q-Tip sampled this bass line from a song called Minya's the Mooch, which is on a Jack DeJohnette record from 1977. The bassist on that record is Mike Richmond. I love what Q-Tip did with his bass line, and I think it's really creative for a couple of reasons. First off, the bass line isn't just sampled directly from the record. It's not just a loop that he threw a drum beat behind. He actually took the bass line, cut it up, rearranged some of the notes, changed the key, and changed the tempo. I love that because despite him probably not having an upright bass or being able to play one, he just used the sounds on the record as his own, and he knew enough to move them and put them where he wanted them. Take a listen to the original bass line. It actually took me kind of a while to get that bass line down on paper because it's not really clear where the bar line is or even what time signature it's in. And I wouldn't really be surprised if what I put down wasn't exactly accurate. The line is pretty amorphous and doesn't really seem to imply a groove that's easy to latch onto, and actually kind of goes out of its way to avoid doing so. I love that Q-Tip heard that line and was able to turn it into something that's so recognizable and so catchy today. I also think it's worth noting here that part of the reason why he could do this was because it was an ECM record. ECM is a jazz label from Germany, and the producer Manfred Eicher was also a bassist. And while I haven't listened to a ton of ECM records, one thing that stands out to me about them is they all have a very present and very high fidelity recording of the upright bass on them. I can't really speak to Q-Tip's process on this track, but I wouldn't be surprised if he picked this sample not because he loved the groove so much or he heard so much in it, but more because he just had access to this pristine recording of an upright bass. And he knew with that, he could shape the notes into something that he really wanted to use. It's obvious that Q-Tip has a great appreciation for jazz, and especially the sound of the upright bass. In fact, on this record, Tribe even hired Ron Carter to come in the studio. So another thing about this bass line, this is one of those tracks that to me really represents a shift away from the idea of just taking samples from R&B and funk and soul records. If you take a listen to the Jack DeJohnette record, it's pretty avant-garde and not something that when you first listen to it, you think, oh, this would be great for hip-hop samples. And sometimes I forget because I heard this song a lot before I really knew a ton about music. But when you really break it down, the bass line is just pretty weird, actually. If we're thinking about it in B flat, it's B flat F, and then there's just that big fat E natural, which is the tritone of the key, and there's nothing happening melodically or harmonically that works to either soften or contextualize that. It's just a pretty big matzo ball hanging there. Tribe was one of the main groups that started to popularize sampling from jazz records, and they ended up creating a whole new sound that would be very influential. Using this somewhat angular bass line, I think definitely helped create new pathways in the music. So now I'll play the line slowly for you. I'll do it on electric because I'm assuming more of you are electric bass players. Drop me a line in the comments and let me know if you play electric or upright and how you'd like to see the upright bass lines taught. I figure it's nice to do on the electric because it has frets, so it just makes it easier for you to see what I'm doing on the instrument. So it's pretty easy, just a couple playing tips here. You want to keep the notes long and legato, although because this was played on an upright, you still want some decay. You can hear he's going for really long notes, but there is a natural decay because of the upright. So I just have a little foam in here, which helps the bass sound a little more like an upright. The other thing to keep in mind is that you could play the D as an open string. Sometimes I like to do it here instead, just because I can keep the tone a little more even. And I also feel like there's not really a pronounced slide off that D, but I feel like there's almost like a subconscious one that's just a hint of sliding off that note maybe that you could put in there. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.